From childhood, we are taught to postpone our lives for a future reward, good grades for a better college, a career for a promotion, and work for a comfortable retirement. But upon reaching the end, many find they've only been chasing the crust of the pie, never tasting the best part. Now, isn't this curious? Here we are, spending our entire lives preparing to live, as if life were some sort of dress rehearsal for the main event. But when, pray, does this main event actually begin? When you graduate, when you get married, when you retire, when you die? You see, we've been sold a magnificent lie. A lie so convincing that entire civilizations have built themselves around it. It's the lie that happiness is always just around the corner, waiting for us to achieve the next milestone, acquire the next possession, or reach the next level of success. But let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that the more successful people become, the more anxious they seem? Have you ever wondered why the richest nations on earth also happen to have the highest rates of depression and suicide? There's something profoundly wrong with our entire approach to living. And today we're going to explore exactly what that is. Picture this, if you will. A child sitting at the dinner table, eyeing a beautiful apple pie. The parents say, "Finish your vegetables first, then you can have dessert." So the child dutifully eats the vegetables, but by the time they're finished, they're told, "Oh, but you must clean your plate entirely." Then it's, "You need to help clear the table." Then you should brush your teeth first. Before long, the pie has been forgotten, divided among others, or simply gone stale. This is precisely what we do with our lives. We create an elaborate system of prerequisites for happiness. And by the time we've jumped through all the hoops, we've forgotten what we were originally seeking. I once knew a man who spent 40 years climbing the corporate ladder. He missed his children's birthdays, skipped vacations, worked weekends, all in service of this grand vision of success. When he finally reached the pinnacle, the corner office, the 7-figure salary, the recognition, do you know what he said to me? "I feel empty. I thought I would feel more." This is what I call the cultural myth of the slice of pie. We're conditioned from our earliest moments to believe that life is fundamentally about acquisition and achievement. First, you must get good grades. Why? To get into a good college. Why? To get a good job. Why? To make good money. Why? To buy a good house, attract a good spouse, raise good children who will do exactly the same thing. But where in this entire chain of cause and effect is the actual living? Where is the joy, the spontaneity, the simple pleasure of being alive? We've turned life into a business plan when it was meant to be a dance. The advertising industry, that magnificent engine of modern discontent, has perfected this art of manufactured dissatisfaction. They've convinced us that we are fundamentally incomplete beings who can only be made whole through consumption. You're not successful until you drive this car. You're not attractive until you wear these clothes. You're not happy until you live in this neighborhood. Each advertisement is a small voice whispering, "You are not enough as you are." And we listen. We actually believe that our worth as human beings can be measured by our possessions, our positions, our performance in society's endless games. But here's the cosmic joke. The moment we acquire what we thought we needed, the satisfaction evaporates like morning mist. The new car becomes just another way to get from point A to point B. The promotion brings new pressures and responsibilities. The bigger house requires more maintenance and higher payments. As I often say, the desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. The more desperately we grasp for control, status, and recognition, the more our anxiety grows. It's like trying to calm turbulent water by stirring it with a stick. The very act of trying to fix the problem makes it worse. Think about it. When you're desperately seeking security, you're operating from the assumption that you are fundamentally insecure. When you're chasing success to prove your worth, you're starting from the belief that you are currently worthless. The chase itself reinforces the very inadequacy it claims to remedy. I've watched people accumulate vast fortunes while living in constant fear of losing it all. I've seen individuals achieve tremendous fame while feeling utterly alone and misunderstood. The external markers of success often mask an internal landscape of anxiety, emptiness, and disconnection. This is because we've mistaken the game for reality itself. Society has created this elaborate scoring system: money, status, symbols, degrees, titles. And we've forgotten that it's all just an arbitrary set of rules that humans made up relatively recently in our evolutionary history. Our ancestors, who lived for hundreds of thousands of years without stock portfolios or performance reviews, somehow managed to find meaning, joy, and fulfillment. What did they know that we've forgotten? The root of our problem lies much deeper than simple materialism or misplaced priorities. We suffer from a fundamental case of mistaken identity. We've been taught to believe in something that doesn't actually exist: the separate, independent self. From the moment we learn language, we're taught to think of ourselves as isolated entities trapped inside our skulls, peering out at an external world that is foreign and potentially hostile. We learn to say, "I think," as if there were a little person inside our head doing the thinking, separate from the thoughts themselves. But have you ever actually found this thinker? When you look for the one who is aware of your thoughts, what do you find? Isn't it more accurate to say that thoughts simply arise like clouds forming in an empty sky, without anyone particularly manufacturing them? This illusion of the separate I creates a profound sense of isolation and vulnerability. If you truly believe you are a separate entity bumping around in a hostile universe, of course you'll feel the need to defend yourself, to accumulate resources, to build walls of security around your precious ego. But what if this fundamental assumption is wrong? What if the sense of being a separate self is itself just another thought, another mental construction with no more ultimate reality than a character in a dream? Eastern philosophy has long recognized this insight. The Sanskrit term Maya doesn't mean that the world is an illusion in the sense that it doesn't exist. It means that we fundamentally misperceive what exists. We mistake the waves for being separate from the ocean, the notes for being separate from the music, the dancer for being separate from the dance. When you truly understand this, the entire foundation of your anxiety begins to crumble. If there is no separate self to defend, what is there to be insecure about? If you are not actually isolated from the universe, but are instead the universe expressing itself as a temporary human form, then what could you possibly lack? But we don't just mistake ourselves for separate entities. We also mistake our mental maps for the territory they represent. Language is incredibly useful as a tool. But we've forgotten that it is just a tool. We've become hypnotized by our own symbols. Take the concept of money, for example. Money is nothing but agreed-upon symbols, pieces of paper, numbers in a computer, little plastic cards. These symbols only have value because we collectively agree they have value. Yet, we've become so obsessed with accumulating these symbols that we've forgotten what they symbolize: the capacity to exchange energy and resources with other human beings. People will sacrifice their health, their relationships, their peace of mind, all for the accumulation of symbols. It's as if we've become so fascinated by the menu that we've forgotten about the meal. The same is true for reputation, status, titles, degrees, all the things our culture teaches us to pursue. These are just labels, just ways of categorizing and ranking human beings for social convenience. But we've invested them with such reality that we'll spend our entire lives chasing them, never pausing to ask what they actually represent or whether they have any intrinsic value. And then there's that voice in your head, what I like to call the cop in the head. This is the internalized critic that constantly monitors your performance, judges your worth, and finds you wanting. It's the voice that says you're not working hard enough, not successful enough, not good enough. This inner monologue pretends to be helping you improve. But notice how it actually functions. Does it inspire you to greater heights, or does it make you feel anxious and inadequate? Does it solve problems, or does it create them? Most of the time, this internal commentary is like a radio that's stuck between stations, a lot of noise with very little useful information. The tragedy is that we believe this voice represents wisdom or truth when it's often just the internalized voices of authority figures from our past, mixed with cultural programming and random mental noise. We let this chaotic internal chatter determine our sense of self-worth and guide our major life decisions. But who is listening to this voice? If you can observe your thoughts, you must be something other than your thoughts. If you can hear the internal critic, you must be something deeper than the criticism. This capacity for awareness, this consciousness that can observe the contents of consciousness, this is what you actually are. Now, having diagnosed the illness, what's the cure? Interestingly, the cure is not another form of striving, not another technique to master or goal to achieve. The cure is more like waking up from a dream you didn't realize you were having. In ancient Chinese philosophy, there's a principle called Wu Wei, which is often translated as non-action or effortless action. But this doesn't mean being passive or lazy. It means acting in accordance with the natural flow of things rather than fighting against it. Think of a skilled swimmer. A person who panics in the water will thrash about wildly, exhausting themselves and likely drowning. But a skilled swimmer knows how to work with the water, how to let it support them, how to move through it with minimal effort and maximum grace. The same principle applies to living. The more we struggle against life, the more difficult it becomes. The more we fight our present circumstances, the more suffering we create. But when we learn to move with life's natural rhythms, when we stop trying to control everything and everyone around us, we discover a kind of effortless effectiveness that the frantically busy can never achieve. I often use the metaphor of muddy water. When water is stirred up with mud, you cannot make it clear by more stirring. The more you agitate it, the muddier it becomes. But if you simply let it be, if you stop interfering, the mud will naturally settle and the water will become clear on its own. Your mind is like this muddy water. It's filled with thoughts, worries, desires, and fears all swirling about. The harder you try to control these mental contents, the more chaotic they become. But if you can simply observe them without judgment, without trying to fix or change or improve anything, they begin to settle naturally. This is the paradox of personal transformation. The more directly you pursue it, the more it eludes you. It's like trying to smooth water with your hand. The very effort creates more disturbance. But when you withdraw the hand, the water becomes smooth by itself. This doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. It means learning to distinguish between effective action and neurotic activity. Most of what we call trying is actually just nervous energy masquerading as productivity. Real action, like the action of a cat pouncing on a mouse, is relaxed, alert, and perfectly timed. There's no waste, no internal conflict, no self-consciousness about the performance. But perhaps the deepest aspect of this cure involves accepting what I call the full cycle of life. We've been conditioned to want only the pleasant experiences, only the peaks, only the sunshine, only the joy. But life is not like that. Life includes the valleys as well as the peaks, the storms as well as the clear skies, the sorrow as well as the joy. When you try to have only the positive experiences, you're like someone trying to have a coin with only one side, or music with only the high notes, or a story with only happy chapters. It's impossible. And the attempt to make it possible creates tremendous suffering. True wisdom involves embracing the entire spectrum of human experience. This doesn't mean seeking out suffering or wallowing in misery. It means understanding that pain, loss, disappointment, and death are not mistakes in the cosmic order. They're integral parts of the dance of existence. When you can accept this, something remarkable happens. You stop wasting enormous amounts of energy trying to arrange life so that only pleasant things happen to you. You stop living in constant fear of the inevitable difficult moments. You become available to the fullness of what life is actually offering right now, rather than holding out for some imaginary version of life that contains only what you prefer. And here's where we arrive at what I call the cosmic giggle. The ultimate joke is that we've been frantically searching everywhere for something we already possess. We've been trying to become something we already are. We've been seeking to attain a state of being we never actually lost. It's like a fish searching desperately for water while swimming in the ocean. It's like the wave trying to find the sea. The very thing you've been seeking through all your striving and achieving and accumulating, that sense of being complete, valuable, and at peace, is what you are in your deepest nature. All the spiritual practices, all the self-improvement programs, all the meditation techniques, these can be helpful as ways of calming the mind enough to notice what was always already here. But they become obstacles if we think they're going to give us something we don't already have. The search for enlightenment is itself the very thing that prevents enlightenment. It's the assumption that you need to be somewhere other than where you are, someone other than who you are, that creates the sense of lacking something essential. So what does it mean to live from this understanding? How do we translate this insight into practical daily existence? First, we must fundamentally shift our metaphor for life. Instead of viewing life as a problem to be solved, a battle to be won, or a test to be passed, we can begin to see it as something much more playful and creative. Think about children at play. Watch how completely absorbed they become in their games. They're not playing in order to get somewhere or achieve something. The play itself is the point. The joy is not in winning the game, but in the playing of it. Or consider a musician improvising jazz. The goal is not to reach the end of the song as quickly as possible. The goal is to make the journey itself as beautiful and interesting as possible. Each note is not a stepping stone to some future note. Each note is complete in itself, perfect for exactly where it is in the larger musical flow. This is how we can begin to approach our lives. Instead of treating each day as something to get through on the way to the weekend, each week as something to endure on the way to the vacation, each year as preparation for some future payoff, we can begin to see each moment as complete and perfect in itself. This doesn't mean abandoning all goals or plans. Musicians have structure in their improvisation. Dancers have choreography. Games have rules. But the structure serves the play, not the other way around. The rules enable the creativity rather than constraining it. When you approach your work this way, it transforms completely. Instead of grudgingly performing tasks to earn money to buy things you think will make you happy, you begin to see your work as a form of creative expression, as your particular way of participating in the vast collaborative artwork that is human civilization. When you approach relationships this way, they become much more alive. Instead of trying to get security or validation or entertainment from other people, you begin to see each interaction as an opportunity for mutual recognition and celebration. When you approach challenges this way, they become adventures rather than obstacles. Problems become puzzles to solve playfully rather than burdens to endure resentfully. But the most radical shift involves learning to live in what I call the eternal present. The past exists only as memories arising in present awareness. The future exists only as imagination happening right now. The only thing that's real is this present moment. All of it is always and only happening now. This doesn't mean ignoring practical planning or failing to learn from past experience. It means recognizing that all planning happens now. All learning happens now. All living happens now. The present moment is not a brief interval between past and future. It is the only place where actual life occurs. When you truly inhabit the present moment, you discover something extraordinary. It is inexhaustibly rich. There is always more to notice, more to appreciate, more to explore. The present moment is like a fractal. The more closely you examine it, the more detail and complexity it reveals. Most people live their lives like tourists rushing through a magnificent art gallery, pausing only long enough to take a selfie with each masterpiece before hurrying on to the next one. But life is meant to be savored, contemplated, deeply appreciated. Each ordinary moment contains infinite depth if you know how to look. And this brings us to the final punchline, the ultimate cosmic joke. All this time you thought you needed to achieve something, to become someone, to get somewhere in order to be happy. But happiness is not a destination you arrive at through effort. It's the natural state of being when you stop creating unhappiness through mental resistance to what is. You are not a problem to be solved. You are not a project to be improved. You are not broken and in need of fixing. You are a temporary expression of the infinite creativity of the universe. As perfect in your imperfection as a wildflower growing in a crack in the sidewalk. The deepest contentment comes not from any achievement the world could offer, but from recognizing your essential nature as consciousness itself, the aware presence in which all experiences arise and pass away. You are not the contents of consciousness. You are consciousness itself, temporarily playing the role of a human being. When you truly understand this, the whole drama of success and failure, achievement and disappointment, becomes what it always was, a magnificent game being played by the universe with itself. And you, the real you, not the character you've been playing, you are both the player and the game, the observer and the observed, the seeker and the sought. So stop chasing. Stop striving. Stop postponing your life for some imaginary future reward. The pie is not in the future. The pie is here now, in this very moment. And you don't need to earn it, deserve it, or achieve it. You are it. The search is over. Welcome home. The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. You see, my friends, the secret was never hidden from you. It was right here all along, closer than your own breath, more intimate than your most private thoughts. You've been looking everywhere except the one place where it could actually be found, right here, right now, as what you already are. And that, perhaps, is the most beautiful joke of all.